I've made the statement very strongly that if they start killing people like they have in the past, we will get involved. We'll be hitting them very hard where it hurts.
Welcome to Watch Mojo, and today we're breaking down everything you need to know about the political crisis unfolding in Iran and what it means for the country's future.
Despite bullets, arrests, and complete internet blackouts, ordinary Iranians are still risking everything for freedom.
Number 10. A revolution nearly half a century ago still sets the rules today.
It began just after midday when a few hundred demonstrators, and it must be emphasized that it was no more than that, began to throw a chain of burning barricades across streets throughout the city center.
Everything happening now has a long echo. Back in 1979, millions of Iranians rose up and pushed out the Shah, bringing in a new system led by Ayatollah Khomeini. Months later, protesters stormed the U.S. Embassy in Tehran and held American diplomats hostage for more than a year.
In November 1979, shortly after the exiled Shah is admitted to the United States for medical treatment, Iranian militants seized the American embassy in Iran. More than 50 men and women are held hostage despite worldwide appeals for their release.
The fallout froze relations, hardened mistrust, and locked both sides into cycles of suspicion that never really went away. The Islamic Republic that was born out of that moment built a structure that fused religious authority with political control. Fast forward to today, and the people marching in the streets aren't just reacting to bad economics. They're challenging the foundations of the system that came out of that revolution.
The people on the streets clearly believe that the Shah will not be returning to Iran. But everything that we have seen here today, laid out in such magnificent splendor on this unique visit, is clearly designed to give the impression of a man and a family who will one day be returning to their home.
Number 9. Iran has paid a heavy price for the way it projects power abroad.
The past few days have seen growing evidence of Iran's resistance turning very gradually into a kind of offensive. This oil installation at Kut received a direct hit from Iranian planes 3 days ago. The storage tanks further south at Fao, Iraq's main oil outlet to the Gulf, have also been hit, but this time by ground fire.
Since the revolution, Iran's leaders have treated foreign policy as a battlefield, sometimes literally. The brutal Iran-Iraq war in the 1980s scarred a generation. Sanctions piled up afterward, especially as Iran clashed with the US and Europe over its nuclear program.
Iranian assets in the US were frozen. Trade in goods and services fell under a ban from 1979 to 87, following missed opportunities with the first Bush administration in 1995. Sanctions directly targeted oil. Under an executive order by President Clinton, Washington clamped down on Tehran's support for organizations the Americans considered terrorists.
At the same time, Tehran built a network of allies and armed movements across the Middle East, from Hezbollah in Lebanon to militias in Iraq and Syria, and the Houthis in Yemen. Whatever the strategic logic, many Iranians now say those choices drained resources from hospitals, schools, and livelihoods at home. When protests broke out in late December of 2025, they spread fast to all 31 provinces because people feel the cost of those policies every single day.
The falling value of Iran's currency has fueled a third day of demonstrations in the capital, Tehran. Shopkeepers and market stall holders began protesting against rocketing food prices on Sunday, and today they were joined by university students demanding political change. There have also been protests in other parts of the country.
Number 8. Elections happen, but the real power isn't on the ballot.
The shrine at Mashhad, the place of martyrdom, a pilgrimage site for Shia Muslims. Whoever wins the election, this is still the Islamic Republic, where the supreme leader and councils of unelected ayatollahs hold parallel and greater power than the elected president and legislature.
While people, they all expecting from the president to give the service, but the real power is somewhere else.
Iran holds presidential and parliamentary elections, but the system is designed so the most important decisions never really leave clerical hands. Under Velayat-e Faqih, the supreme leader sits at the top. He supervises the military, shapes the courts, and ultimately decides the bounds of political debate. Bodies like the Guardian Council screen who's allowed to run, blocking candidates who might challenge the system too directly.
All qualify to vote, but none will bother. You care about politics?
I myself know. I don't care, because I know that I'm not gonna have any effect, I don't know, on the politics.
You don't think there's anything you can do to bring change?
I don't think so.
You can feel the limits everywhere, from who gets to speak publicly to what policies can actually be implemented. That's why so many protesters now aim higher than economic grievances. They're calling for changes to a structure that millions believe isn't capable of reforming itself from the inside.
Now, what began as discontent over the collapsing economy, things like rising prices, a plunging currency, and chronic power and water outages, but it's now rapidly evolved into something more widespread. It is anger at the entire system.
Number 7, the Revolutionary Guard isn't just the muscle, it's the system's backbone.
Established in the wake of the 1979 Islamic Revolution, the Revolutionary Guards are often described as a parallel government within Iran. Tasked with protecting Iranian interests at home and abroad, it's also heavily involved in regional politics and conflicts.
The IRGC began as a force meant to protect the revolution. Over the decades, it became a power center all its own. Part army, part intelligence service, part business empire. In a crisis, the Guard steps forward, and that's what we're seeing now. Along with Basij military units, IRGC personnel are on the streets, at checkpoints, and surrounding universities and neighborhoods where protests have surged.
The Islamic Republic's Revolutionary Guard Corps has actively engaged in terrorism and created, supported, and directed other terrorist groups. The IRGC masquerades as a legitimate military organization, but none of us should be fooled. It regularly violates the laws of armed conflict. It plans, organizes, and executes terror campaigns all around the world.
Human rights groups report live ammunition being used on crowds, arrests mounting into the thousands, and security forces moving aggressively to shut down any momentum. For the ruling system, the Guard is the guarantor of survival. For many Iranians, it has become the symbol of what stands between them and the country they want to live in.
The Revolutionary Guards also control much of Iran's economy and wield significant political power domestically, as many of their former members work in parliament.
Number 6, young Iranians are done waiting for things to improve.
You cannot rule over whole, caged birds. These are young people who have aspirations, who look at their neighboring countries. They're really not asking for very much. They're incredibly patriotic. Many of them are spiritual. They just want a tiny bit, an iota of freedom.
Iran's median age hovers in the mid-30s, which means millions of Iranians have no personal memory of the revolution. They've grown up watching prices rise, jobs vanish, and freedoms shrink, while the state stays rooted in the political culture of the 1980s.
And goodness knows where Iran would have been had the young entrepreneurs, how these amazing young people that you have just listed could have just had a tiny bit of ability to move on without being, oppressed, held back by sanctions, etc., that never harm the top echelons. It always gets the guy in the street.
When protests began on December 28th in Tehran's bazaars and university districts, young people were there first and in the biggest numbers. The tragedy of 23-year-old student Rubina Aminian, fatally shot as protests intensified, became a rallying point. Her death resonated far beyond Tehran, fueling vigils and marches in cities like Shiraz, Ahvaz, and Mashhad. The generational divide could not be clearer. An aging leadership defending a system younger Iranians increasingly see as a prison, not a homeland.
Many young people said to me, we want a government that if it's good, we re-elect it. If it's bad, we throw it out of office. We're Muslim because our parents were Muslim. So within Iran, this has been bubbling away now for many years.
Number 5, protests aren't new, but this wave feels different.
For a few days in July, it looked like the start of a second revolution. Students on the campus of Tehran University demanding political and social reform, and demanding it now.
Iran has seen uprisings before: 1999, 2009, 2019, 2022. Each time, the state cracked down hard, forced people indoors, and waited for the anger to dissipate. This time, that formula isn't working as smoothly.
It's like a war zone. The streets are full of blood. They're taking away bodies in trucks. Everyone is frightened tonight. They're carrying out a massacre here. It's officially a massacre.
The unrest has touched every corner of the country. Villages, university towns, industrial hubs, border regions, and pulled together groups that don't always stand side by side. Teachers, truckers, bazaar merchants, and students have all joined in. Rights groups now estimate more than 10,000 arrests and hundreds of deaths.
And activists say the death toll in Iran has climbed to 538 and more than 10,000 detained amid an internet and phone blackout this weekend. Now, we've seen rallies across Canada as Iranians here struggle to connect with family and friends.
In Fardis and Sanandaj, witnesses describe panic as automatic gunfire scattered crowds. The sense on the ground, even through blackouts and silence, is that the old safety valve isn't relieving the pressure anymore. Number 4, Tehran is trying to turn out the lights.
Alec, many of the people that we talked to at today's protest have family back in Iran. And with the internet currently out there and that death toll rising every day, they say that their voices are one of the only tools that they have left. I'll go ahead and show you what it looked like earlier today at the Capitol this afternoon. Chants filling the air as hundreds gathered outside the state building to call for regime change in Iran.
On January 8th, the Iranian state flipped the switch on the country's digital life. Internet access collapsed across Tehran, Mashhad, and dozens of other cities, followed by mobile disruptions that left families struggling for basic communication.
Last I talked to my cousins was 3 days ago or 4 days ago, but that was before the blackout. So they said they're okay, but a lot of people are very concerned. Almost everybody has someone back home. They are killing people because just simply we're against the government.
The blackout didn't stop the protests, but it made them harder to follow, harder to report, and far more dangerous. Videos still make it out. Blood on pavement, volleys of gunfire, hospital hallways jammed with the wounded. Doctors quietly say morgues are overflowing. State media calls protesters, quote, foreign agents and, quote, thugs, echoing familiar lines. But a government that cuts the country off from itself sends a silent message. It knows the truth won't flatter it.
Many of us in the diaspora have family, friends, and of course our compatriots in Iran. And it was easier to contact them, I would say, earlier on in the protests, but the last 2 days, there have been complete internet blackouts. And it's difficult for them, too, with their telephone lines, because when they do go out to protest, it's sometimes hard for them to reach each other. So every footage that we can get on the outside is like gold to us.
Number 3, the world is paying attention, slowly, uneasily, but loudly.
In the last 48 hours, Iranians have suffered more casualties than America did after the 9/11 attack. This is a moment that is defining. Despite being completely cut off from the world, internet shutdown, and for a regime that is massacring its own people, this is an opportunity to liberate that nation.
As news of killings and mass arrests leaked out, condemnation from abroad followed. Leaders in Europe issued statements urging restraint. UN officials expressed alarm. In Washington, Donald Trump warned Iranian leaders that there would be consequences if the bloodshed continued, hinting at everything from new sanctions to alternative communication pipelines.
Have they crossed your red line yet to trigger a response?
Well, no, they're starting to, it looks like, and there seem to be some people killed that aren't supposed to be killed. These are violent, if you call them leaders, I don't know if they're leaders or just they rule through violence. But we're looking at it very seriously. The military's looking at it. And we're looking at some very strong options. We'll make a determination.
Whether these words translate into meaningful action remains unclear. Having said that, though, the fact that Tehran immediately accused the US and Britain of orchestrating the protests shows how nervous the regime is about losing control of the narrative. Diplomatically, Iran is on the defensive, juggling sanctions, domestic revolt, and the fear that global opinion could harden into coordinated policy.
As you can see, people are still fighting despite this crackdown. They hope that there will be assistance in protecting them from further bloodshed. I've called upon further strikes, and that's beginning to unfold. We're beginning to see more and more defections, which is very important as part of the transition. So all of this is at play as we speak.
Number 2, what happens inside Iran won't stay inside Iran. Iran sits at the geographical hinge point of the Middle East and Central Asia, and that makes every internal tremor feel like a regional warning bell. Oil markets twitch anytime the Strait of Hormuz feels insecure. Gulf states quietly shore up energy exports. Israel watches Iran's proxies nervously, wary of a desperate leadership making bold moves. None of this requires a formal war. The region is already connected through shadow conflicts, cyber skirmishes, and long-range weapons. If Iran's internal walls crack, those fractures could spread outward through migrant flows, force realignments, or proxy groups testing boundaries. The crisis may feel like a domestic story, but its ripples travel farther than most headlines show. Before we continue, be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. You have the option to be notified for occasional videos or all of them. If you're on your phone, make sure you go into your settings and switch on notifications. Number 1. The United States may decide how long this crisis lasts, or how far it goes.
The president posted on social media yesterday, Iran is looking at freedom perhaps like never before. The U.S. stands ready to help. In response to Trump's comments, Iran's parliament speaker told Trump that U.S. military and shipping centers would be considered targets.
America's stance is unpredictable, and that uncertainty shapes every calculation in Tehran. President Trump has again embraced a hard line. More sanctions, fresh threats, and public warnings that the regime will, quote, pay a price for killing citizens. Yet behind the rhetoric is a hint of something else. Reports of indirect messages from Tehran probing whether talks are possible, even now. For Iranians taking to the streets, U.S. statements matter symbolically, but they know they're ultimately on their own. For Iran's rulers, Trump's mix of pressure and potential engagement forces them to brace for the unknown. And for the rest of the world, the question is stark. Does this crisis burn itself out, or is it the start of something larger?
They know also that they do have this international pressure, what we're hearing from the US president, and also significant pushback from the Iranian side, in fact saying that Trump should concern himself with problems in his own country.
What do you think will happen next in Iran? Is there anything we missed? Be sure to let us know in the comments.